Much unlike the night before, when there was chaos, there were fires erupting through that neighborhood.
And as Marielle just showed us a few minutes ago, first responders are still on scene in areas trying to regain what was lost in Minneapolis. Let's take a look back at how the night unfolded and how we got to where we are this morning.
Chaos filled Minneapolis streets for a fourth night. Not even the first night of an 8 o'clock curfew could prevent it. Crowds followed the National Guard down Lake Street, continuing through tear gas. At the same time, a popular cafe went up in flames in North Minneapolis, burning until the early morning when firefighters were finally able to put it out.
I'm at 35W in Washington, right by Bobby and Steve's, where behind me they've shut down the freeway to an extent with a protest.
Stepping onto the highways, traffic was blocked on 35 and 94 near downtown for a couple of hours when people marched from an earlier protest near U.S. Bank Stadium. Drivers were forced to stop their cars, some trying to wait it out, many others abandoning them completely. Some in the crowd overtook a delivery truck, taking the packages and starting them on fire.
Down, you can see the massive crowd swarming around that 5th Precinct police building.
They marched on after about an hour, heading to their next stop. For many, that was Minneapolis's 5th Precinct. Hundreds filled the streets around the building just one night after they burned down the 3rd Precinct. No law enforcement to be seen around 11 o'clock, but that soon changed. The National Guard and State Patrol reinforcements first came marching in along Lake Street just before midnight. And not long after, the Pentagon announced military police were on alert for a trip to Minnesota. Minutes later, police started enforcing the curfew and arresting people on the streets 2.5 hours after curfew began. That's when the chaos cranked up another notch.
We understand there's shots fired at officers near the 5th Precinct.
The police were kneeling on top of the building. Next, crowds spread out from the main roads and headed into residential areas, lighting literal dumpster fires in neighborhood streets, throwing in anything they could get their hands on. People living there felt the frustration on many levels.
I support the cause, I just don't support the action. That's the problem right now. You know, to me, it's some thoughtless action, some selfish, thoughtless action right now.
As the chaos reached a climax, state and city leaders held an emergency news conference, begging the masses to go back home, leave the city standing, and remember why they're angry to begin with.
Why are we talking about anarchists who are burning down damn buildings that were businesses that were built up by our indigenous and black communities? Instead of talking about, we had a horrific situation where a police officer murdered and was charged for the death of a black man.